Non-communicable diseases such as diabetes and coronary heart disease are increasing in prevalence across the globe. They're the leading cause of death in all regions except Africa and result in the death of over 36 million people each year. Their rise is largely due to changes in lifestyle and diets, such as reduced physical activity and poor nutrition. Mark Hanson from the University of Southampton has been investigating when our risk of developing these diseases really begins. It turns out we need to be aware of our lifestyle quite early on.
We've known, I think, for probably nearly 100 years that aspects of our early lives, in childhood and actually even before we're born, stay with us for the rest of our lives. These processes actually affect the physiological settings, the control mechanisms of many of our body processes, things like our appetite, our food preferences, our metabolism, and whether we have a predisposition to lay down fat, even perhaps whether we have a predisposition to exercise or whether we tend to be naturally rather idle. All these things we now know are controlled to a certain extent in our early lives, and they're affected by things like mother's diet, her physical composition, how much she exercises, and actually even aspects of the father's lifestyle as well. They are set up in our early lives and influence risk throughout the rest of our lives.
And early life means early. Not only as early as infancy or when a child is in the womb, but also the way parents are choosing to live their lives before their child is even conceived.
So in terms of the passage of disease risk from one generation to the next, in fact, the story starts pre-conception, even before pregnancy, because we now know that a mother's diet and body composition, and actually a father's lifestyle as well, can affect very early embryonic and fetal development. So this is truly a life course picture of how the risk of these diseases develops in individuals.
Hanson's team combined epidemiological studies of a range of human populations with findings from animal models in the lab to identify the risk factors and investigate the biology of what's causing this increase in non-communicable disease.
The major findings really have been that processes called epigenetic processes, whereby the environment during development affects gene expression and thereby the settings of physiological control systems that stay with us for the rest of our lives, that these things are very, very powerful indeed, that they don't affect the DNA code, the genetic code itself, but they affect the way that the genes that we've inherited from our mothers and fathers actually operate. So it's the discovery that these processes can be influenced by aspects of mother's diet, body composition, lifestyle, and fathers too.
The key is to find out if these changes are preventable. It's long been preached to do more exercise, eat better food, and stop smoking. But this message now needs to reach the public at an earlier age.
The focus on our work now is to see whether improving diet and lifestyle before conception can have an important impact on these epigenetic processes and the outcome of that pregnancy. In public health terms now, it's becoming clear that we need a new focus on adolescent health and behaviour, not only to help our young people in their teens and early adult years to be healthier themselves, but also so that when they become parents, they pass on healthier epigenetic processes to the next generation.
The message to improve lifestyles and reduce stress is nothing new to many ears. But the repercussions of a bad lifestyle are, and new consequences are constantly emerging. Non-communicable diseases are the biggest killer globally, and by 2020, the WHO predict the largest deaths will occur in Africa. So it's not purely a developed world problem. In fact, the biggest impact is in low and middle income countries.
Non-communicable diseases such as diabetes, cardiovascular disease, obstructive lung disease, and some forms of cancer are now becoming a major concern globally. The most worrying thing as well about them is that 80% of these deaths will actually occur in developing countries. So these are not diseases of affluence. And as development proceeds, as low and middle income countries knock back the burden of communicable disease, unfortunately, as their economies begin to blossom a little, this non-communicable disease epidemic is taking hold, and it's an absolute tragedy. WHO predicts that these diseases will increase by certainly more than 10%, up to 25% in some countries over the next decade. And whilst they are preventable, we really have very little of a strategy globally for their prevention. And that's really why the life course approach, starting in early development, is so important to addressing this burden of disease.
Professor Mark Hanson from the University of Southampton, who'll be presenting at the IUPS Congress in Birmingham in the UK in July 2013. I'm Mira Senthilingam.